All right, so Chapter 3, Lesson 8 is divide decimals by decimals. So the steps for today are almost exactly the same as what we did yesterday in the previous lesson, where we were just dividing multi-digit numbers. But this time we're just going to throw some decimals in, okay? So it says in the warm-up, an art studio has 36 gallons of acrylic paint. They separate it into 9 containers. How many gallons are in each container? So this is kind of what we did yesterday. We did the 36 divided by 9. So how many gallons do we have in each container?
4.
Very good. We have 4 gallons. Now, we're going to throw some decimals in here. Use the division problem, this division problem, to find patterns and complete the table below. Then use the patterns to describe the dividends, divisors, and quotients in each set. So here, when we did 36 divided by 9, or 9/10ths, we get 40. 36 divided by 9 hundredths is 400. 36 divided by 9 thousandths is 4,000. So what do you think 36 divided by 9 10,000ths will be?
40,000.
40,000. Good. For the second one, we have 3 6/10ths divided by 9. That's going to give me 4/10ths. If I move the decimal over to the left here and have 36 hundredths divided by 9, I have 4 hundredths. Over here, moving the decimal again, that's 36 thousandths divided by 9. That gives me 4 thousandths. And then, so what do you think the 36, if we move the decimal again, 36 10,000ths divided by 9, what's that going to give me? 4 10,000ths. Very good. Now, look at the example number 3. Now here, we're moving the decimal to the left on both the dividend and the divisor. So here we have 3 6/10ths divided by 9/10ths. That gives me 4. 36 hundredths divided by 9 hundredths. That gives me 4. If I have 36 thousandths divided by 9 thousandths, I get 4. What do you think this divisor over here is going to be? This is 36 10,000ths divided by 9 10,000ths. Very good. 9 10,000ths, and that's going to give me 4 again. So, do you guys see the pattern here? If I move the decimal to the left one time in the divisor only, then I get a bigger number. My decimal will move to the right one time each time. If I move the decimal to the left in the dividend, right, in the dividend, to the left once, what happens to the quotient? The decimal moves to the left. It moves to the left again once each time. If I move the decimal in the dividend and the divisor, in the quotient, decimal doesn't move at all. Does everybody see that? So here, when it says then use those patterns to describe, here, the decimal point in the dividend and the divisor move one place to the left each time, and then the quotients are the same here down in example 3. Today we are going to divide by decimals. Now, make sure you write your heading. Please write your heading. Divide by decimals. Now, when dividing by decimals, we're going to change the divisor into a whole number. We want to change the divisor into a whole number. To do this, you're going to multiply both the divisor and the dividend by the same power of 10. Then you're going to divide as with whole numbers. Now, on this where it says multiply both the divisor and the dividend by a power of 10, what that means is that you're just moving the decimal. If you move the decimal one time in the divisor, then you have to move the decimal one time in the dividend. Okay, that's what that blue part is saying. And then you divide like normal. All right. So for example, let's say we had 16.1 and we're going to divide that by 2.74. The first part says here, change the divisor, which is this number, to a whole number. So we need to move this decimal to the right until it becomes a whole number. You see that? So we're going to move this 2 times to the right. Now my decimal is right there. If I move my decimal 2 times in the divisor to the right, then to match that up, I have to move the decimal 2 places to the right in the dividend. So I'm going to move the decimal 2 places over here too. So now my decimal is over here, and what do you think I'm going to do over here? You're going to annex a 0. So example 1, it says find 1 71/100ths divided by 9/10ths. 1.71 divided by 0.9. So here, just like in the example that we did over there, we're going to move the decimal until the 9/10ths becomes a whole number. So we're going to move the decimal over 1 time. So now it's 9. You see that? And then I have to match that up in the dividend. So the decimal here needs to move to the right once, and the decimal when your answer is going to go between the 17, between the 17 and the 1 there. You see that? So then you just divide like normal. 9 goes into 17 1 time. 1 times 9 is 9. Subtract. And then we bring down the 1. And then 9 goes into 81 9 times. And then 9 times 9 is 81. There's 0 remainder. Do you see where the decimal is? All right. Very good. So, for example 2, it says 2.64 divided by 0.6. 2 64/100ths divided by 6/10ths. So, we've got 2.64 inside the house and 0.6 on the outside. Now, we want to multiply the 6/10ths times a power of 10 to make it a whole number. So what am I going to multiply? How many times am I going to move that decimal? 1 time, so that means I'm multiplying times 10. Does that make sense? If I were moving it twice, I would be multiplying times 100. Make sense? So if I move the decimal once in the divisor, how many times do I have to move it in the dividend? If I move it once in the divisor, I have to move it once in the dividend. So multiply the dividend also by 10. Oh. Right, which is, we're multiplying, the dividend will become 26.4. So that's going to become, we're multiplying by the same power of 10. Sorry, I got a little confused. Okay? So we're going to move that 2.64, that decimal is going to move to the right one. Does that make sense? Okay. So now we just multiply like normal. Okay? So 6 goes into 26 how many times? 4 times. So 4 times 6 is 24, and then we subtract. Then we get 2. And then we're going to bring down the 4, right? So there's the 4. So how many times does 6 go into 24? 4 times. And then 6 times 4 is 24. And we have a 0 remainder. Very good. And do you see where the decimal is? So we move the decimal to the right one. So my answer, there it is right there. All right. So let's do these got it problems. We have 54 4/10ths divided by 1 7/10ths. Okay. So we've got, which one goes inside the house? Which one is the dividend? Very good. 54.4. So that one goes inside. So that's 54.4 divided by the divisor, which is 1.7. Now, we want to move the decimal in the divisor until it becomes a whole number. So now it's 1.7. I'm going to move that decimal to the right 1 time, and now it's 17. Is everybody clear with that? So now if I move the decimal in the divisor 1 time, I have to do the same thing in the dividend. So I need to move the decimal to the right in the dividend 1 time, and where's my decimal going to be in the answer? Straight up here. And now you're just going to multiply like normal. Okay? So, how many times does 17 go into 54?
3.
All right. So 3 times 7 is 21. Carry the 2. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5. And then we subtract. So that's going to give me 3. And then we'll bring down the 4. And then 17 goes into 34 twice. And then 2 times 7 is 14. Carry the 1. And then 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1, that's 3. And then we subtract and we get 0 denominator. Alright, so it's brought to my attention that I kept saying multiply like normal. I mean divide like normal. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's do example B together. Okay? So, example B, we're going to put our dividend goes under the house, so that's going to be 8 and 424 thousandths, right? And then we're dividing by 36 hundredths. So how many times am I going to move the decimal in the divisor to make it a whole number? 2 times. So 1, 2, move the decimal to the right twice, and so that means I have to do the same thing in the dividend. So now my decimal is going to go straight up here. So there's where the new decimal is, goes straight up. You see that? Good. So now we just multiply. We divide. So how many times does 36 go into 84? Twice? Let's see. So 2 times 6 is 12. Carry the 1. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7, and then we subtract. So that's 2, and there's 1, and then we're going to bring down the 2. How many times does 36 go into 122? 3 times. So 3 times 6 is 18. Carry the 1, again, 1. And then 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10. And then we're going to subtract. But here, of course, we're going to need to borrow. Very good. So now we've got 12 minus 8 is 4. And bring down 1 minus 0 is 0. And then bring down the 4. How many times does 36 go into 144?
4 times.
Very good. So 6 times 4 is 24. Carry the 2. And then 4 times 3 is 12, plus 2. Very good, 14. And then we subtract, and we have a 0 remainder. So my final answer here is 23 and 4/10. So there's our answer. So here we're going to move the decimal in the divisor 3 times to the right. And then so that means that we need to move the decimal 3 times to the right in the dividend. So now the answer is going to go straight up there. You see that? Right there is our decimal. So now we can do some division. So now this is not 007. This is just 7, right? So how many times does 7 go into 6.3? 9 times. So 9 times 7 is 63. So do I need to write these zeros? No. So now, when we subtract, we end up with a 0 remainder. And what do I want you to put in front of this one? I want you to put your leading 0 in there. So that's going to be 9/10 like that. So now we have zeros in the quotient and the dividend. We're going to divide with zeros in the quotient and the dividend. Okay? So, it says here, line up the numbers by place value as you divide. You're going to annex zeros in the quotient in order to keep the digits with the correct place value. And then you're also going to annex zeros in the dividend to continue dividing after the decimal point. So this is like when we're talking about continuing, you know, where in the last lesson I said you have to continue because you have to keep on bringing down. Remember I said that? You have to keep on dividing until you have nothing left to bring down. Okay? So, what are we going to write down up here? So those, you're going to have to write the whole thing. So you're going to line up the numbers by place value as you divide. And you're going to annex the zeros in the quotient in order to keep digits with the correct place value. And then finally you're going to annex zeros in the dividend to continue dividing after the decimal point. So for example 3, it says we want to find 52 divided by 4/10. So that's 52 is the dividend, goes inside the house. We're dividing by 4/10, that goes on the outside. Then, just like we said before, we're going to move the decimal until the divisor becomes a whole number. So we're going to move the decimal once to the right in the divisor. So that means I have to move the decimal once to the right in the dividend. So what do you think I'm going to do right here? You're going to annex a 0. Very good. So you're going to annex the 0, and then the decimal goes straight up there. Is everybody with me? So then, once you do that, then you just divide like normal. So here we have 4 goes into 5 one time. 1 times 4 is 4, then we subtract. Then we bring down the 2. Here 4 goes into 12 3 times. 4 times 3 is 12. Now we don't want to stop, right? So we subtract. And then we bring down the 0. Okay? So how many times does 4 go into 0? 0 times. So 4 times 0. Now I don't like the way the textbook does this, so I'm going to add here. 4 times 0 is 0, and then we have a 0 remainder. Is that clear? Example 4. Here we have 9 thousandths divided by 18 hundredths. So once again, we're going to move the decimal 2 places to the right in the divisor. So I need to move the decimal 2 places to the right in the dividend. In other words, we're multiplying times 100 because we're moving it twice, right? So now my decimal is right, and the answer is going to be right before that 9. So we're going to bring that decimal straight up right there. And now we divide like normal. Okay? So 18 goes into 0, 0 times 18, 0. Bring down the 9. 18 goes into 9, 0 times. So we have to put that 0 in there. Is everybody with me? So 0 times 18 is 0. Now we subtract again. So that's 9. And then we keep on bringing down. You keep on dividing until you have nothing left to bring down. So you bring down the 0, and now 18 goes into 90. 5 times 8 is 90, and now we subtract with no remainder. For example 5, we have 11 2/10 divided by 7 hundredths. So what are we going to multiply by before I divide here? In other words, how many times am I going to move that decimal? We're going to move the decimal because we're going to divide by 7 hundredths. So I need to move the decimal 2 places over here, right? So if I'm moving the decimal 2 places, what am I multiplying by? 100. Very good. Because there's 2 zeros, right? You move the decimal 2 places, there's 2 zeros. Got it? So that's the 100. So now we just multiply like normal. So 7, oops, they didn't show the moving the decimal over here. So let's show this right here. So we're going to move the decimal there, right? Move that twice, and we're going to move this twice. So my decimal is going to go back there at the end. Does everybody see that? So now, how many times does 7 go into 11? Once. 1 times 7 is 7, and then we subtract. So, and then we're going to bring down the 2. So how many times does 7 go into 42? 6 times. So 6 times 7 is 42. and then we're going to subtract, right? And then here, once we subtract, then, like I said, I don't like the way the book is doing this. Now we're going to bring down this other 0, right? How many times does 7 go into 0? 0. That's why we have that other 0 there. Now 0 times 0 is 0, and now we have no remainder. So here we're going to divide 14 thousandths divided by 5 and 6 tenths. So we have 0.014 in, is that the right place for that? No, that's the divisor, right? This goes out there, right? Good catch. Good catch, Mrs. Hart. Okay, so here we're going to divide 5.6 divided by 0.014. Now, how many times am I going to move this decimal to change it to a whole number? 3 times. If I'm moving the decimal 3 times, what multiple of 10 am I multiplying times? 1,000. Very good. So we're going to move the decimal 3 times here. 1, 2, 3. And the decimal now will be right there. So you're just going to bring that straight up. And what am I going to do with these? You're going to add annex some zeros. Very good. And now you just divide like normal. So 14 goes into 56 how many times? 4 times. 4 times 4 is 16. Carry the 1. And then 4 times 1 is 4 plus 1 is 5. And now we're going to subtract. This is going to be 0. Then I'm going to have to bring down the other 0. Is everybody with me? So we're going to bring down this. If you want to put a 0 here, that's fine. So then you're going to bring down the 0. So how many times does 14 go into 0? 0 times. 0 times 14 is 0. And then we're going to subtract. Okay? And then we're going to bring down the last 0. Bring down the last 0. 14 goes into 0 times. And then 0 times 14, of course, is 0. And then we end up with a 0 remainder. Is everybody clear? All right. All right, so example E says we want to find 6.24 divided by 200. So here we are going to, which one goes inside the house? 6.24, right? 6.24, the 6 and 24 hundredths, goes inside the house, and we're dividing by 200, right? 6.24 divided by 200. So the one that you divide by goes on the outside, right? So 200 goes out here. Now, and that's one of the things I was talking to you guys about last class. You don't always put the bigger number on the inside, right? It depends on how you read the problem. So this is our problem. Am I going to move the decimal at all? No, I'm not going to move the decimal at all. So here the decimal is going to go straight up. Is everybody with me? So how many times does 200 go into 6? 0. So we have 0 here. 0 times 200, 0. And then we subtract. And then we're going to bring down that 2. How many times does 200 go into 62? 0. So 0 times 200 is 0 again. So we're going to subtract. Right? So we subtract, we get 62. And then we're going to bring down the 4. So how many times does 200 go into 624? 3 times. So we have 3 times 200, that's 600. Okay. Now, we are not going to write remainder 24. So when we subtract, we need to annex the 0 so that we can keep on dividing. This is where you annex a 0 in the dividend. So here, we're going to annex another 0, and we're going to bring that 0 down. Is everybody with me? So 200 goes into 240 how many times? one time. So 1 times 200 is 200. And now we subtract again. So there's my 40. And then we're going to annex another 0. And then we're going to bring that down. You guys, if it helps to write the arrows like over here, go ahead and write the arrows over there, okay? So how many times does 200 go into 400? 2 times. So 2 times 200 is 400. And now we have a 0 remainder. So here is your answer. All right. And again, if you would like to draw the arrows, you can draw the arrows. I will add those in for the notes. Okay. So we end up with 16 thousandths. So 25 goes in. We're not moving the decimal at all. So 25 goes into 0, 0 times. 0 times 0, 0. Subtract. Bring down the 4. 25 goes into 4, 0 times. 0 times 25, 0. Subtract. Bring down and annexed 0. 25 goes into 40 one time. 25 times 25, 1 times 25 is 25. When we subtract, we get 15. We bring down another annex to 0. And now 25 goes into 150 6 times. And 6 times 25 is 150, and we have 0 remainder. All right, example 6 says, how many times as many internet users are there in Japan than in Spain? We want to round to the nearest tenth. So in order for us to do this, we are going to divide 127.4, which is how much is in Japan, divided by 40.4, which is how much is in Spain. Does everybody see that? So this question is how many times as many internet users are there in Japan than there are in Spain. So when we do that division, we're going to move the decimal 1 time in the divisor, and we're going to move the decimal 1 time in the dividend, and then we will divide like normal. So here, this is going to give us, if we round to the nearest tenth, because it says round to the nearest tenth, this will be 3.2. So there are 3.2 times as many internet users in Japan than there are in Spain.